Hey everyone, glad to see you here. For the ones who were able to make it in person, I'm very happy to have you on the call. We're going to be going over a lot of things today related to how to build a business in 90 days, and in general, how to build a strong foundation in order that you can then use to build upon. If we don't have too many people with us on the call, but I'm hoping that more and more will trickle in as we go. And if you are not on the call, but listen to this from your house at another point in time, well, know that you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or other mediums in order to ask more questions or to get other templates. I'm always happy to help. A bit of background on myself. So my name is Joaquim Miro. I am one of the founding partners of MLG Blockchain, one of the two companies that created a joint venture, the joint venture GDA Capital, which is now one of the fastest growing boutique financial technology services firms in Canada. We also run Secure Digital Markets, a brokerage based in Toronto. Those are both the businesses that have been skyrocketing. We've been almost doubling revenue every month, as well as doubling or almost tripling the size of the team in the last quarter. I've already had successful exits of two other companies in the past, and am continuously looking at helping other startups. I do so through the Forum FinTech Accelerator as well as through Holt Accelerator. I'm also an advisor to various crypto projects within the space, so always happy to help, and very glad to have you on board. So what I'm going to share with you today is actually a lot of information that I wish I knew in the beginning when starting companies, and I wish that other people that I've worked with as a partner within their business knew. So if you're all CEOs today, or if you are executives or any other role within the companies that you're with, just know that whether you are at the CEO level or whether you are a partner or at an employee level, there's all having this knowledge and being able to implement all the gaps that you see within your current organizations is going to help a lot in ensuring that you have a strong foundation, especially if you are a shareholder within the company. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And all right, here we are. Can you see the screen? I take that as a yes. It seems like it's working. Perfect. So I'm going to present the screen. Today, we're going to learn how to build a business 101. I've kept this quite simple given time. I mean, there's 1,000 things that you need to know in order to build a business, but I wanted to put down essentially the things that I find are the most important in terms of the foundation. So what we're going to go over today is essentially the following. So first and foremost, why, not what. So defining your business proposition. Then we'll go into the main documents that you need to establish a proper company, followed by looking at what could be a very good virtual tech stack, especially for those of you who are founders that don't necessarily have that much money in the bank yet, and you need to find a way to, a viable solution in order to have proper working processes, but without having the money necessarily to pay for the more expensive tools. We're then going to look at how to get the right talent by looking at who versus how, and then how to pitch your idea properly and get funding, followed by a few useful resources. And at the end of this, I'm actually even going to give you a checklist if you're a blockchain company of all the things that you should do pre-ICO. So let's jump in. First and foremost, when building a business, one of the things that I want to touch on before I go into any of these slides is that the number one thing to keep your business alive is revenue. And in order to get revenue, you need to have a team that can deliver on said product or service that you're offering. And you need to be able to get clients that are going to pay for that. So how if you look at it from a wholesome perspective, to have revenue, you need to attract right talent. And to attract right talent, you need to have a proper business proposition. You got to have something that is inspiring enough to people that are working with you, to potential partners that you're going to be attracting into the business, to investors that are going to be investing in you, and to clients that are considering other alternatives that are oftentimes way further ahead than you. And so you're having to convince them that one, you're more trustworthy, you are one, more trustworthy, and two, have a better solution or a solution that will help their needs a lot more. So the number one thing here is you always want to figure out what your why is. Then after that, determine how you're going to get to it. And depending on what, how, like that how, then you figure out what that product is. If you start by having the product and then create, a bullshit why, is going to be felt throughout the organization, especially over a long time. So why is it that you're starting this? Is it because you want to end world hunger? Is it because you want to go to space? Is it because, you've always had a dream of meeting like a certain person, or that you wish you would have been able to? And for example, I don't know, you're creating a company that allows for people to have like longer lives because you never met your grandfather. I don't know what the story is, but it needs to be something that pulls on some type of emotional cord. And this is really the base of creating like the why of your company. If you don't have this, especially down the line when you go from, the first 20 to 100 employees, and after that, when you go from that 100 to 1,000, that scale up phase, this is where oftentimes, if you don't have a strong enough why, things will start fizzling out. So from the get-go, figure out what your why is, stick to it, and then any problem that comes on, or every time that you have to pivot, you're pivoting around that why. So you have a lot more space to work with versus if you create a product and you don't have a why. Well, then if you pivot your product and then you become a bit lost and the entire team can't really like align with you. So hopefully you already have one. If you don't, what I recommend is that you really take some time and figure that out. Once you have that why, you want to be able to communicate it properly. So this is all about refining your pitch. If you're not able to explain to me what your business is in 5 words, then you have a huge issue. Like you should be able in 5 words to explain to people what it is. And I'm not talking necessarily about a slogan or a catchphrase. I'm just talking like, what is it that you do? In 5 words, you should be able to explain that to anyone around you. And if that's not the case, then you haven't like refined it like to the true nature of what it is that you do. And like, I dare you to try and find something that is not the case. There's always going to be a way to do so. Once you're able to describe your business in 5 words, and then I'd recommend you do at least a 30-second elevator pitch. And this is something that you should be able to recite in your sleep, continuously building on it, continuously making it better. And that 30-second elevator pitch is really like 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs, which you can then use as like your PR bio whenever there's PRs about you, or whenever there's PRs about the founders, about the executives of the company. Once you have this, you're then in a much better position to build like your 5 to 10 minute company pitch deck, which we'll get to at the end of the presentation, and which we spoke a lot about on the panel on how to pitch to investors in the previous panel that we did with in relation to the next stop blockchain startup competition. So some of the documents that you need in order to establish a strong foundation are the following. First and foremost, you're going to need really strong raise docs. And I call these raise docs, but they're also just essentially like your base foundational documents for the company. So these are essentially your business plan, which goes over the market opportunity, then goes into like how you're going to address that market opportunity, how large that market opportunity is, and then how your product like fills essentially a gap for that. In the beginning of that, you can also again go towards your why and why essentially you're looking to have a business in that specific space. From this business plan, you can summarize a very simple pitch deck, which I'll get into at a later date. But that pitch deck should be very, very visual, very interesting to look at. Unlike this slide that has way too much writing, today my objective was to go really, really deep with you guys. So I didn't spend too much time on making this sexier. But like if you're pitching to an investor and it's not on a 1-hour discussion, it should be, very, very simple graphics. People are going to be reading what is on the slide a lot more than listening to what you're saying in most cases. So you want to avoid having too much text and have a lot more graphics that again show your why, that show like your flow. And finally, for raise docs, you're going to need like a financial situation and financial projections, as well as a SAFE, which is essentially the legal docs that allow you to raise money. On the operational and HR side, I'd recommend having basic onboarding templates. as you build more businesses, and if you're entrepreneurs, and oftentimes you're not just going to build one business in your life, you're going to build many. And the chances of the first one being successful is what, like 3% to 5% at most. So instead of just like rebuilding from scratch every time, you should always use base templates and keep those templates so that you have something to work from and to benchmark from whenever you're building a new business. Legal docs, so essentially you need your partnership agreement, incorporation docs. A Gantt chart is essentially like looking at the high level picture of everything that's going to need to be done in order to hit your main objectives for whether it's a quarter, a year, 2 years. If you're a startup, I'd recommend maximum 1 year, but even going by quarters, you can use, for example, the OKR methodology, objective key results. Check it out. It's a very interesting methodology that we use at GDA and SDM. And of course, finance docs, so essentially like all of your basic templates, but especially invoices, so that you get invoices and receipts for everything that you do. That way you don't end up getting pinged when you're expensing things and you can't tax it properly. Most of the time in businesses, entrepreneurs don't necessarily have an accountant, unless if you're an accounting background, you don't think about this. Me coming from a marketing and sales background, this is one of the things that I was very much lacking on, and it ended up costing us a lot more than if we had just kept at least an Excel doc with all the necessary information. On the product side, you're going to need essentially like a training guide for your product. Every time that you spend any time training someone, you should always immediately think to yourself, oh, let's make a training out of this, or let's record myself doing this so that I never have to have this same conversation again. Your whole objective when creating your foundation and whenever you're building the business is, how can I make sure that I'm spending the least amount of time on this and that I'm not going to have to spend time on this again, because I can start automating things. On the sales side, essentially you'll need your sales training and process docs, case study docs, because this is something that a lot of clients are going to ask for. If you don't necessarily have case studies yet, do 1 or 2 projects for free. Get case studies, get really strong client testimonials if you're in an industry that allows it. If you're not, well, at least have case studies showing like how you came in and solved this and brought them from A to B the same way that's going to resolve their problem. Obviously like a strong pitch deck. And once you do sell them, you're going to immediately want either an MSA and a SO or some other type of agreement doc that allows you to do business with them. An MNDA and a referral agreement are also the bottom line documents that I recommend you get. There's a few pretty interesting law firms, depending on where you are around the world, that have incubator programs. So essentially, like, just look up, for example, like law firm incubator programs, and you're able to see and find a bunch of law firms that will, instead of charging you like a few $1,000s for these different documents, will not charge you anything, but essentially like become your lawyer over time, and will do it for a much lower cost. So this is something I strongly recommend that you check out if you do need those legal docs. And finally, for marketing docs, the 2 main ones that I'd recommend as a base are your media kit, which essentially has your who, what, where, why, when, as well as a PR bio, and your brand guide. So this is like your story, why should I care about you? And then the basics like your logo, slogan, tagline, what colors you use, your font, a quick target market analysis, like how do you speak to someone, like always, in a more fun way or a more professional way, like things like that, such as your tone, are going to be very useful, because these are things that both internally and externally need to be the same. When you're in the process of building a business, it's not necessarily, again, it goes back to your why. It's not about just having the best product on the market, because someone else will come out with a better product. It's about having the team that allows you to get to that. And I'm gonna go into more detail about the team very soon, but you're gonna want that team to be aligned with you. And as you get more partners on board, instead of saying things all the time, if you have these documents well done and continuously updated, well then by that point, you know that everyone in the team is also representing the company in the right way. So what do you need essentially in order to establish your tech stack? So the first things that I would recommend is having proper communication. Nowadays, I would recommend that rather than going office first, go virtual first. For sure, still have an office. There's a lot of value to being in person, and I recommend it. However, I would even more so recommend that, I mean, if you think about it, even if you are in the office, everything's going to be done online and probably on the cloud. So might as well build a strong foundation that already allows for virtual, for essentially for mobility and to recruit talent, especially since right now you probably don't have the largest war chest in order to get the best talent. You're gonna be able to get talent from all around the world, to source talent regardless of where they are, if you go virtual first. And it also allows you to more easily share things with other people. So on the communication side, I would say like everything that I've just offered you in terms of this tech stack right now was done with the idea that you don't necessarily have crazy funding. So most of these products are freemium. So Gmail is essentially part of the Google Suite. You can get the Google Suite for free for up to a certain amount of people and a certain amount of gigabytes. And then after that, it's a per person, per user, per month model. That's not crazy expensive. But I'd recommend it because it allows you to have that leeway and to give right access to different people, and make sure that like you have that folder that's clean so that people aren't making documents over and over again. One of the things that we do in order to make sure that everyone are using the most up-to-date document, and we'll say like master document next to it, and then people can search and make sure that that's actually the document that's most up-to-date. Whenever something's old, you put it in archive, you don't erase it, because if you do that, you also ensure that people can use that as a base template for other things. Secondly, Slack. So Slack is a communication platform. You've probably either heard of it, and if you haven't, then you're probably living under a rock by now. So I strongly recommend you check it out. Slack or Discord, but Discord I would recommend more towards like if you have an external community, versus Slack is a lot more internal. It's very much more of a corporate product. Other people oftentimes use Teams, which is the Microsoft equivalent of it. But I like Slack because it's freemium as well. And I would recommend finally on the communication side, have at least one weekly call every week with the entire team, no matter where they are, no matter if like everyone's in different time zones, it doesn't matter. It's very, very important that you have at least a weekly touch point in order to share all of like the wins and obstacles so that everyone feels like they're part of the same mesh. And this happens until you're at least up to like 15, 20 people. And at that point, it usually starts like developing into different departments with maybe like all hands on deck call every 2 weeks or every month. On the project management side, I would strongly recommend Asana, which is also a freemium product, but there's various other project management tools that are out there if you have one of preference. A lot of people use Trello as well, but I find with the boards, it's a lot less easy long-term to have the entire business using it versus having something like Asana that has both lists and the boards that you can move from column to column. So I'd recommend that you do that. And every time that there's a process that's involved, so whether it's onboarding a new client or whether it's onboarding a new employee, offboarding a new client, offboarding an old client, or offboarding an old employee, those are easy templates to make that then it's super easy to just duplicate the template and make sure that whoever is taking care of that task isn't gonna have anything fall through the gaps. There's various other templates of the sort, but I recommend that you check that out and think like always think in processes, because the fact of the matter is that especially when you're in a growing stage, you're gonna see some churn, and everyone in the company is hyper important. And because everyone's in the company is hyper important and doing so many different things and wearing different hats, they oftentimes there's a lot of key personnel risk. There's a lot of there's a strong chance that if they leave, there are things that only them knew how to do properly. So if you have these processes in place, well, it allows you to keep your business a lot more sustainable and to not have crazy gaps when someone leaves out of nowhere, which I hope never happens to you, but I mean, it's part of the business. On the marketing side, so essentially what's your funnel stack? I'd recommend an email sender. So whether that's MailChimp, which is also freemium, or some of the higher level products like SendGrid, Marketo, what have you. This is gonna be very useful. Above the fold on your website, especially if you're just starting out, if you don't already have an email subscription, do it. Just do it like next week. It's the most important thing that you can do in a business, is to have a subscription list. If it's difficult, or if I have to scroll to the end of your website in order to find your subscription, like there's a mistake there. Like you don't necessarily have a working product yet. And even if you do, the number one thing you want is to be able to have repeat business. In order to have repeat business, you want to figure out who your target market is. In order to figure out who your target market is, you need to have subscribers. So get your subscribers as soon as possible. That subscriber list is worth a lot of money in the end for you in the future, and will also allow you to figure out who your first ambassadors are. In order to start showing up more on Google, having proper SEO is key. There's a SEMrush that's quite good. There's also various other firms that can do that. But I'd recommend definitely checking it out. I didn't write it here, but I would recommend having Google Search Console that's linked to your website properly. That way you're ranking more on certain terms. And finally, if you are in the business of one to many sales, meaning you're one company and you're selling to many companies or many individuals at once, then having a funnel that brings people in through some type of ad campaign is going to be very important. And one of the best funnel softwares that I know is ClickFunnels. There's various other ones that are available out there as well. What I like about ClickFunnels, though, is that there's also very strong communities of people that know how to use it and that will help you build the proper funnel for your business. On the sales side, and I know that this is super nitty gritty. I'm going really deep here. After that, we're going to go back into more high level things, but I thought that this would be really helpful because this is the type of stuff that usually would take you hours to research and find. So this is all from my own experience and that of other colleagues on my team. On the sales side, so having a customer relationship management platform, I find, is the most important thing by far in a company, because if we remember correctly, what's the number one thing that keeps your business alive? Revenue. How do you get revenue? By having clients. How do you have clients? By having leads. How do you make sure that you're following up with your leads? With a CRM. So a customer relationship management platform such as HubSpot is actually freemium, meaning that you can automatically create create a login right now if you go to HubSpot.com, and then you're going to be able to link that to your Gmail account if you're sending emails through Chrome. And every time you send an email to a new contact, it's going to generate that contact within the database, which you can then, if you keep your contact database clean, can filter into whatever type, is it for this product or that product? Is it because they're a potential investor? Is it because they're a potential partner or refer? So you can then after that properly segment your lists depending on what it is that you need. And when you have new employees come in, they can also know everything that's happened within that contact. A good way to prospect for new business is with Apollo. So Apollo used to be about $17,000 a month. I'm not exaggerating, to use. And it was only for very, very, very large enterprises, mostly Fortune 500s. And they completely changed their model during the pandemic. So now it's $100 a month or $99 a month. And you have an unlimited contact database that is I think it's something like 250 million people that are on it, business professionals that are on it, or probably even more than that. And it allows you to segment. It's a bit annoying on the $100 a month version because you can only pull 25 at a time. But it's still 100% worth it if you're in the beginning of prospecting and you're not already well entrenched into the industry. And having proper web analytics so that you can see who's your traffic, who's coming on your website. I would recommend that you link Google, as well add the necessary pixels. Even if you're not doing ads yet, add the pixels, because what happens is, let's say you have your Facebook pixel or your Instagram pixel and the other social media websites pixels on your website. What it does is that it starts gathering information about the type of audience that you have on your website. And then when you are ready to do ads, it'll already have a lot more information so that it can target the right people. So I'd recommend doing that ASAP. And finally, you can also connect your CRM such as HubSpot so that then whenever someone that's already in your contact database goes on your website, you get a notification that that's happening. And finally, on the finance and accounting side, so you should probably have an accounting software such as Xero, as well as an HR software such as Bamboo HR, which is super strong. There's various others as well that you can use, but if you don't have money in order to do that, well, at least keep an Excel file with every transaction of money coming in and out Keep the file like very clean so that it's easy to filter between what it is that you need. And then that way, when you have an accountant that comes on, you're not paying him thousands of dollars in order to backtrack. It's going to cost you way more money than if you just keep an Excel sheet up, like, an Excel sheet tab. This is the least fun part for most people, unless if you're from an accounting background, but just do it. And then on the HR side, if you aren't using an HR software, but you have full-time employees, make sure that you're withholding tax, because if you don't, that's a liability that's direct to you instead of just to the company. Let's say you, for any reason, end up going bankrupt. If you didn't withhold those taxes, those are like personal to you, regardless of if you're incorporated or not. All right, I know that was a lot. Take a moment to breathe. Moving forward. So the number one thing that will make or break your company in the end, we were talking about revenue being the main driver of the company, but what is the main decision factor that will allow you to see if or allow investors to see if the business is going to be successful or not, is the talent that's on the team. So the number one thing I would recommend to you is learn as quickly as possible how to attract the highest talent, and then how to efficiently delegate. And once you do that, start teaching the people that you're delegating these tasks to do the same thing at the next level. And so that way you're starting to build up your team, and you're starting to build a team of intrapreneurs from within your business, so that you can become the conductor of your own orchestra. And I mean, the next level of that is that at some point you train someone else to be the conductor of the orchestra, so that you don't even have to focus on that. That's like very, that's after like 5, 10, 15 years, depending on the business. But going to the back to like the inception point, when you're finding your right partners, essentially you want partners that are similar to you in terms of values, and similar to you in terms of like ambition, objective, exit plan, but 100% different to you in terms of skill sets. You do not want someone that's good at the same stuff as you, because what's going to happen in that case is that you just are doubling on things that you're going to double, not only skill sets, meaning that like it's just like an opportunity loss because you're giving them equity of the company, but also because if you both have the same skill sets, if you both come from the same educational background, having studied the same thing, chances are you're both focusing on the same types of issues. So you want someone that will have such a different background and skill set that they're thinking about all the things that you're not thinking about, such as if you're in a marketing and sales background, you're probably not thinking about how to book in the right way on accounting, but if someone comes from a more operational or like, ops background, well, then that's something that's very important for them. So you want I would recommend 3 founders, between 2 and 4, depending on the business. Doing it alone over time is going to be very heavy. So I would recommend trying to find at least 1 to 3 other founders. If they have previous startup experience, access to capital partners, super important. If one of them can have that, access to industry partners, like that they've been in the industry a long time. If they don't have that, it's not the end of the world. You can find advisors that have that. And ideally, if one of them have, a book of business, especially the one that's going to be in charge of bringing in sales, which is in the beginning, oftentimes the CEO's job, then I would recommend that you take the time to try and build out your network within that space ahead of time. And finally, everyone thinks if you build your business and you're your own boss, it means less hours, but it could not be further away from the truth. You're going to be working 80+ hour weeks, and that's very normal. And same with your employees. So essentially on the employee side, what you want is to find people, and whenever you're vetting new potential employees, especially your first 5, those are the most important employees you're going to have in your company by far, in the beginning of your company, of course. So in that first phase of the startup phase, that's going to make or break your company. And what you want are people that have an ownership mentality, that feel they're part of the business. I would recommend giving them a bit of equity so that they feel as though they're part of the business, and that they're going to put all of their effort and mind share towards it, and feel like they own a part of the success should it go well. And they should be able to work independently and remotely, be extremely trustworthy, be able to delegate and grow into a role that will be like a managerial or director or executive role, and be willing to work very hard. There's many other things you should vet for depending on which role, depending on which industry, But those are the things that no matter what industry you're in, if they don't have that, then they will end up being more of a burden than a help to your company. So if we look now at great pitch decks, the first one that comes to mind for me is Airbnb. Here, check this out. This is the most simple of all pitch decks that I've ever seen. It's 12 slides. First one being the problem. Then it goes into the solution. Very, very, very easy. Everyone can read this. Everyone can understand. Oh, okay, cool. Then market validation. So there's already interest in my product. This is the size of the market. It's huge. There's a huge opportunity with us. This is the actual product. This is the business model of how we're going to make a bunch of money with it. This is how we're going to come to market. This is our competition. This is why us versus anyone else. And that's that. The one other slide that generally I'd see in a very good pitch deck is just a one related to the team. If they didn't have it, it's probably because they were already pitching to people that were warm connections with, like, a warm investors. But generally speaking, especially if you're in the beginning stages of your business and you don't have a track record of revenue or positive revenue, then you are more selling yourself versus the team. If you want to check out a bunch of other really good pitch decks, I would recommend I'll send this deck out after, but essentially 30 legendary pitch decks. These are all really, really great pitch decks and you just click on any of them and, they go through it, what was good with each one, how it, what are the main takeaways. Yeah. So definitely an interesting resource to check out. And there's also an interesting article on Forbes about how to build a strong pitch deck that I enjoyed. Main things that come out of that, like as a quick summary, I'd recommend keep it as simple as possible. Keep it super short. Keep the font large, so as little text as possible. You should figure out the average age of your audience, or actually, to be safe, the age of the oldest person in the audience, and you divide that by 2, and that should be the size of the font. So it's like usually pretty large. And use very ambitious numbers. Obviously, they have to be somewhat possible, but no one wants to invest in a business for someone that thinks small, especially at the seed stage. You're looking for the next unicorn. And so that means that you have to sell yourself first, and then you can sell your product. Since you're keeping the deck very short, I'd recommend having a lot of backup slides, as well as having a data room that's ready. This is not for you to show on the first or even probably second meeting, but it's good that you have it so that you show that, and so that one, you can show the information if necessary, but most importantly, when they ask you questions, you've not only thought about it, but you've already put it out on paper. You already can visualize the exact answer to pretty much any questions that are going to come out. The way to know what questions are going to come out is either checking out like what the main questions are that come out during investor pitches, which you can find on Google, I'm sure, or I would say practice with friends, with family, with like lower level investors. And the more you practice, the more you're going to hear those questions. Every time you hear a question you never heard before, create a slide about it, and just have that done. Not that you're going to show that slide, but just for yourself to know. As a CEO, you should be spending a large amount of your time on refining this deck until you have enough capital in order to keep you alive for a few years. Moving forward, so I put together a few useful resources that I recommend that you use. The first is where to look for information depending on the department. So in terms of pitching and building businesses, I really recommend Alejandro Cremades. His newsletter is very, very good. He's a guy based in New York that does like a bunch of help with investments. And every week he has a new interview with someone that exited, a company between X amount of hundreds of millions and many billions. And the stories are always really interesting, and I find that it's helped me a lot in how to think as a founder and how to think as a scale-up founder, as a unicorn builder. Secondly is The Hustle, very, very good newsletter to stay up to date in what's happening in cap markets. Good to Great is a very interesting book on how to how to build the right foundation and how to be a proper leader in order to get your business to the next level. And in general, if you just listen to Shark Tank pitches, I'd say that that's one of the best ways to hear what's a good pitch, and most importantly, what's a bad pitch. Secondly, on marketing, if you want to learn about inbound marketing, HubSpot blog is the #1 place to go. Neil Patel is also really, really, really strong. And then everything in terms of external sales, Russell Brunson with his funnels is really, really, really strong. On the sales side, How to Win Friends and Influence People is probably one of the most powerful books I've ever read. I really don't like the title of it, but in terms of the content, it was written in like the 1920s or 1930s, and to this day, I still find it's one of the most relevant things that I've read in relation to like one-to-one sale. And influence in terms of how to build, like how to think when building large scale sales campaigns is a very, very good book. It's written by Robert Cialdini, who is a behavioral psychology professor. On the blockchain side, Pomp Crypto is Anthony Pompliano is really great, and I'm sure you're all in the blockchain space, so I didn't spend too much time putting the whole list there, but just crypto Twitter in general is a good place to start. And whenever you see someone that's like talking about things that are that are coming out before they come out on any of the major publications, that's generally someone that you should follow, because they're generally in a lot of internal circles. On the tech side, so Zapier can integrate into anything. And if you're not from a tech background and you need tech people, Code Mentor is the place where I'd start. One of the best websites that I've found in order to find really high quality coders quickly, and to find and there's like reviews of each one, all the different work that they've done. So it's an easy way to vet and make sure you end up with a good coder. And on the HR side, for freelance websites, there's Upwork, Fiverr, Freelancer, and a few others, as well as I think as a startup, the #1 place that I'd put any job description, whether it's for a partner, whether it's for one of the first employees that are going to be getting equity, AngelList is the #1 place you should be posting your stuff. That's where I've gotten the best talent that I've found for very start level businesses. And on the intern side, you can just go on industry Telegram channels, Discord channels, Facebook groups, as well as partnering with universities. When you're creating any document in your company, I recommend that you use existing templates. Time is your most valuable asset by far, and it's the one that you have the least of. So how can you make sure that you don't end up spending a ridiculous amount of time? Is you have templates. So what are some really good examples? When you are building out a presentation, rather than creating a new presentation, you create a duplicate of an existing presentation that already has your branding, that already has like, your logo, your layout, and you go from there. If you are pitching for, I don't know, a journalist review, or for an award of some sort, or for an accelerator program, oftentimes they're asking for the same information. So rather than writing that information on the website and then pressing submit, write all that information out in a Word doc, have all of the questions that are super clear and like your answers. And in that way, whenever there's like a new reward or a new like award that you're applying for, or a grant that you're applying for, or a I don't know, a job description that you want to fill out, you should always be duplicating things and then working from that versus working from scratch. I've seen some people do it from scratch, especially from your, like, for example, an engineering background, and it's a huge waste of time. So I recommend you don't do it. So the process that I always follow is first look online. There's generally existing templates for pretty much anything that you need. If you can't find it online, or if it's not close enough, then ask friends, family, colleagues if they have existing templates or something they've done. And I'm never saying about copying. You should never copy anything. Plagiarizing is a crime, and is not acceptable, both from an ethical and professional perspective. I'm saying it's just literally for like the basic layouts, and then obviously all of the content should be different. And in general, the layouts should be different too. But if you're starting from an existing layout and you're like, oh, I like this, but I'd change it like that, like that, like that, and change the wording, then it becomes a lot easier than starting from a blank page. And yeah, if none exists, and then you build it the first time, and then after that, you have your own templates that you can copy from instead, which is probably the best. And so to finalize, I've put together essentially a pre-ICO checklist. If you happen to be a project that is going to be launching a token, this is going to be gold for you. So I've put together essentially so MLG is a consulting business we used to run, and we still do it at the same time now of GDA Capital, run very, very large token sales for clients. And this is a summarized version of what is an even more in-depth list, where it's essentially a checklist of everything that you're going to need to do in order to have a successful ICO. So I strongly recommend you check it out and use it as a checklist. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt. There might be things that are more relevant or less relevant to you, but it gets your creative and strategic juices flowing in order to make sure that you have everything you need to have a successful raise. So with that said, I now open up the floor to questions. If anyone wants to reach out, feel free to do so via email, WhatsApp, or LinkedIn. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'll open the floor to any questions, should there be any.
Hi, Eric speaking here from Germany. Thanks, Joachim. Wow. Was typing a lot. Possibly wasn't necessary because you will have, of course, the recording. Currently, I'm setting up a venture in insure tech or de-insure, you could say. Lots of sort of business guys who sort of know how to run the corporate life, but not really the startup. So I'm currently sort of just in this was, I think, where it is. Let me check the notes. Yeah, documents to establish a strong foundation. You were saying sales docs. I only know the NDA, but I don't know what an MSA or SOW is. Well, I'm from Germany, so possibly we use different abbreviations.
MNDA is mutual non-disclosure. So it's just oftentimes you're gonna be asked for an NDA, or they're gonna ask for an NDA, rather than always signing their own. And having your lawyers check out. You should never sign an NDA that you haven't gotten checked by your lawyers, unless if you're from a law background. So better to have your own. And then so is scope of work. So like, what's the scope of work you're giving? That's more when you're on a consulting side versus if you're like a product side. But on the product side, you probably need some other type of, like, I don't know, usage disclaimer or what have you.
Okay. That's down.
By the way, I'll send this presentation over to Connor, who can circulate it to everyone after as well. So glad to hear your notes, but feel free to use the presentation as you wish.
You also said, well, regarding your tech stack, you prefer to start with Google Suite. I think this is good, of course, to have it for free. I just sort of not sure about data privacy. Therefore, I'm sort of pivoting more to Confluence, because also for free below 10 people. Or do you think, hey, it would be, Atlassian would get too expensive if I sort of want to scale? Is this as well the reason why you sort of try to bootstrap as much as possible with Google tools?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even if you do end up going into the paid version, I still think it's like the strongest thing, because you can give access to specific docs or specific folders. You don't use like the regular Google Drive, you use the shared drive. And so by using the shared drive, and I find that's the most important thing, any document that's created by anyone on your team, regardless of where they are around the world, is owned by the company. So if for whatever reason they end up leaving, you own the documents. So it allows for a lot more legacy building than if you do it through any other, like, let's say you just do it through like your own, like everyone does it on their own computers. And then after that you share using whatever the shared drive, other shared drive services.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to break the ice to also for others to ask questions. Let me go into my notes while thinking about other questions.
Awesome. I'm just looking through everything. So Tim, yes, we can send the slides. And Jordan, thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to make it as informative as possible. I know it wasn't the sexiest, but I thought that that wasn't the objective today. It's not to wow with a beautiful presentation. It's like to give you the nitty gritty practical information that I wish that I was given back in the day. Tim, in terms of my LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure it's okay, but if not, then just put this email in and it'll allow it to work. Yeah, does anyone, okay, yeah, Jordan, in terms of legal incubators, it's a good question. I can get back to you. I know of a few just general legal firms, and I don't know if there'd be any on the blockchain side that'd be down, just because you want like very, very good lawyers if it's about like your legal structuring, or if it's about like securities laws, just don't mess with it. But in terms of all the other basic documents, whether it's incorporation docs, partnership, partnership, shareholder partnership docs, and like your MNDA, your SO, your just like the basic documents that you need for a company to run, like I don't know, employee agreements, contractor agreements, all of those types of agreements. There's a lot of incubators. Just look up like legal incubators on or like legal firms with incubator programs, or what have you. And you'll find some that take incubator clients, like that type of wording. Any other questions?
I have a question. It's similar to John's question in the comments or in the chat. I'm wondering especially how to find a good incubator. I mean, there are lots of blockchain incubators. Sort of my team's currently looking at Zug in Switzerland, or with Outlier Venture. They sort of look the same. They also have the same offers and vesting requirements. But well, the Outlier is in London, so it would be completely remote. Switzerland would be as well sort of on site. So those are only the sort of the detailed things. But what are you looking for when were looking for when looking for partners and angels and mentors?
Great question. So what I did was not what I'd recommend that you do, which was like the more the merrier. I figured, if I can get in a bunch of incubators, if I can get in a bunch of, if I can get a bunch of awards, and then that's going to help my credibility and whatever it does, you should get like one or two. But you shouldn't make that a focus. Focus should always be revenue and the actual product and service. And if you have a token, then obviously like the health of your token. So instead, what I'd recommend now, like looking in hindsight, is find an incubator that doesn't have too many projects that invests in the projects that they take on. You want them to have upside potential with you, because then whenever there's a much stronger chance that they think about the right opportunities and bring those to your attention when they come on. So you want to align incentives regardless of who you're doing business with. And so like that type of accelerator is going to be one that can, especially if you're trying to raise, or you want to, it depends on your objectives, right? If you want to raise, then you should go towards accelerators that are going to have that more like a venture-based accelerator. If you want to develop the best product in the world, then you should go into a dev focused accelerator. So I'd really focus it more on that and take one. That way you're not putting too much of your mind share on the accelerator, because there's usually a lot of things that they ask during the accelerator, during like the sessions, and a lot of homework as well. And especially since like your team is usually pretty thin, you don't want all of your time to be spent on that either. But I would recommend, like I would always put though the ones that can help you raise or help you get funding first. And if you're the type of company that won't need funding, then one that can really accelerate your growth from a revenue perspective would be my second biggest recommendation.
Thanks.
Jordan, in terms of what steps to recommend that I recommend post hackathon. So, I mean, why are you in this hackathon? What's the main objective? Is it for credibility? Is it to win the reward? Is it to get accepted into an accelerator program? Is it to network? What were like the main goals for you to join this hackathon? Just to like learn?
I can take that one because Jordan's on my team.
Yeah.
So we joined, well, one to kind of we found one of our developers that way is through the hackathon. But we also just like, especially with this one, we wanted the ability to have these workshops and learn and get some guidance on, you know, just getting all of this started. So I think that was a big part of it for us. And then also, you know, the potential to get funding and open some doors that way as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So in that case, I mean, if you're the type of project that does require a lot of devs, then attending hackathons is probably like one of the best ways to network and find them. We used to have like a dev shop as well, and in that dev shop, like we would either host our own hackathons or go like attend like as many hackathons as possible. We had someone that was business development side that was also doing some HR and finding these types of high talent individuals. So that's like good on you. I think that to keep doing that for sure. In terms of like attending other incubators or accelerators, like as I was mentioning to Eric, I'd recommend rather than going for many, really try and like get into one good one. If you're able to. If not, then even if it's like a smaller one, then one that like is focused on helping you get all of these just having someone to bounce those ideas off of. So whether it's you, Kelly, or whether it's Jordan that is like pitching to investors, if you're in an accelerator, you'll be continuously doing that pitch. So you'll be able to get it refined and get feedback on it. And then instead of focusing on getting into more of them, I would recommend like try and figure out who are the people that have the most keys that could unlock all of the doors that you need in order to get your business from like point A, not to point B, but to point M, you know, and like reach out to them personally and try and get them as an advisor, try to get them as like a strategic investor, but even as an advisor, I would say that will probably end up having a lot more long-term benefit to you than just going after another accelerator or incubator. And the reason I say that is if you think about it, a lot of these accelerator programs, incubator programs have a lot of companies within their mold. But if you get like an advisor that, you know, I don't know if it's like, whether it's a professor or whether it's someone that's like in the space, but that like oftentimes people are very, very willing to give advice. There's a certain saying actually that was mentioned in our previous panel by, I think it was by Paul. He had said, if you, or actually no, it was with Mr. Rasmussen, I think. And he was saying that if you reach out to someone for advice, you'll get money. If you reach out for money, you'll get advice. And so I'd recommend like always reach out to people, whether it's an investor or an advisor, asking them for like feedback, like just candid feedback on something. And if they're not answering, then you know, follow up with them on a regular basis, not like in an annoying way, but just like, you know, commenting on things that they're sharing and what have you, until you create that relationship so that they do respond. I would say that's a much better use of your time than trying to apply for 1,000 different accelerators. Jordan, in terms of if there's any pressure, any liability in accepting VC investor funds, 100%. Like there's, depending on which ones it is, there's like generally some pretty like firm constraints. And depending on the model. So for example, there's some models where they'll take a percentage of it's not a set percentage. So it's like whatever that amount of money will be in terms of percentage in your next successful raise. So that sometimes can be a very low percentage, but at the same time, it could be half your company if you really fail at your raise. So you just got to be sure that you're going in with the right reasons. And I think that it's still worth accepting the VC or investor funds, but just like you're getting in a marriage the same way that you did with your partners. I'd say even more so because they're going to be asking questions about the money and you're like contractually obliged to like do the best to make it grow. Hopefully that answers all of your questions. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you very much for coming on the call and looking forward to seeing all of your submissions at this wonderful competition and hopefully that you join our incubator program. So talk soon. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye, guys.